someone says you're overqualified for a job, like you have to sort of dial yourself back from living at that standard of perfection, which that means you have to almost separate yourself into two mindsets. Because as much as I have had failures in investing in business, I still don't accept that. Like, I'm not okay with that on my surgery life. Like, I still want 100% success. Like, that is my goal.
Welcome to the Lead In Podcast, where we dive deep into genuine stories of leaders who've seized control of their journey. This podcast is brought to you by Lead Hub, your growth partner for the trades. And now, let me kick it over to our guy, Austin Lenny.
Guys, welcome. We got him back, Mr. Jason Balara in the house. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. Happy to be back. Happy to see you. It's been a minute, so yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, I basically just brought you on so you can tell everybody that I was right many times over.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. No. So for people that don't know you, kind of give them an idea of what you're into, what you do for that job per se, I guess, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. I am I'm a lot of things. I'm a veterinary surgeon. I am a real estate investor, currently a fund manager, and we're working on business acquisitions like yourself. But I think ultimately, I feel like people know me in one of those two worlds, kind of as a real estate investor or as a veterinary surgeon. And so that's the depending on who's listening, that's the audience. But I have done a lot over the last year plus to try and sort of bring those two worlds together. And yes, because of some of the things that you have told me and been right about. So it's, I do have you to thank on a lot of it. And certainly, it's been a ride, but yeah, it's, that's in a nutshell, what's with me.
I think about this a lot, and I'm not talking about you. I'm just talking about in general. One of my favorite lines from the music business is, "Be careful the song that you write, because you might be singing it the rest of your life."
Yeah, it's true.
I think I got caught in this too. Airbnb was a big part of my life, but then I started getting to be known as the Airbnb guy. But I don't want to talk about Airbnb anymore.
Right.
And and Mark was like, "Yeah, but that's what you said you were."
Right.
And I'm like, "Damn it."
Yeah.
So it's hard.
Yeah, it's very hard to make a switch in any way, and I think like a lot of people just don't because of that. They're afraid to do it because of what they think that the perception of themselves in the world is, and maybe within their own brains. But like, yeah, it's a tricky thing to navigate for sure.
And I think because then at the end of the day, what I started doing myself is I started picking who I told what I did what with. Like, meaning, I used to just tell everybody, "I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that," and now I'm like, what do they need to know? And that's like the end of it. Like, that's it.
Yep.
Like this, like, what are you doing these days? Like, not a lot of people know because I'm just like not really talking about it.
Yeah. It's funny because in the veterinary world, you pretty much try to never tell people what you do. Like, it's like,
you and dentist are very similar. My dad never say, "Oh, he's a dentist." No.
Right, because then they want to tell you if you're a dentist, they want to tell you about their teeth. If you're a vet, they just want to talk about their pets and ask, which is like good to an extent, but it's like, yeah, if you're, sit on an airplane next to someone you've never met and they ask you what you do, like that's a question that, depending on the length of the flight, you might be like setting yourself up for a long conversation about. And it's like, you do have to decide if you want to. Is that a conversation you want to have or you put headphones on and just block out the noise. So it's true. You have to almost like wear different hats, masks, whatever you want to
Sure.
call it, like depending on the company that you're in.
So, I've met a lot of doctors in my days. My dad was one, and he would admit it to you too. Made a lot of money, but he coaches them now, dentist. But they didn't really invest in real estate, so like it's a high paying job, but some don't own their practice or they make a bunch of money. What
Yeah.
do you think the disconnect is to like equity or like not passive investing, but like just investing that money they're making?
I think probably the first disconnect is just knowledge, the lack of knowledge around it, that it's an option. I mean, I've finished my residency in 2008. Like I was very poor all of my life up to that point, and then went to a transition of making a good living, but I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know and had I started what I started in 2020, had I started that in 2008, 2009, 2010, like my financial life looks very, very different now, but I just didn't know. I didn't know it exists. And I think the other thing maybe specific to doctors is you spend you spend a lot of years in school learning a very, very specific skill that you're essentially expected to be perfect at, right? Like it's not okay in my surgeon self. It is not okay for me to have a failure there. It's not. It's just I don't accept that that's an okay thing. But when you move over into the world of investing or business or whatever, you have to expect failure, and I think that's a big holdup on like medical professionals, right? Like you don't want
Never
a
thought of
doctor
it that
that's
way.
like like you don't want a doctor that's like you win some, you lose some, like that. Nobody wants that from their like in any scenario, right? Like you want the like if my kids need something, some medical, like I want the best pediatrician, I want the best success rates, like whatever it is. And you want that in investing, like you want to invest with the best options, but like it's very hard to know who that is in the real estate world. There's a lot of noise in social media and stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff out there that can make someone look like they're the best, but it's very hard to actually get to the bottom of the track record. So instead of like taking the time to figure that out, you're busy, you've got your medical career, like you just do nothing, or the traditional routes of investing like for 401ks and IRAs. Like it's a just a I think it's a almost like too much knowledge, right? It's like when someone says you're overqualified for a job, like you have to sort of dial yourself back from living at that standard of perfection, which again that again means you have to almost separate yourself into two mindsets. Because as much as I have had failures in investing in business, I still don't accept that. Like I'm not okay with that on my surgery life. Like I still want 100% success. Like that is my goal. So it's just I think it's just a different, you spend a lot of years with that thinking of perfection or near perfection.
That's a really good point. I never thought of it that way. And then also, you're probably just sick of learning at that point too.
Yeah. I mean, yes, that is true. Like there was a good portion of time after, when I finished my residency, which is like my surgical training, then you have to take a board exam. And this is similar for, whether they're veterinary specialists or human specialists. Like there's a lot of tests. I took 10 weeks of all I did was study. I read textbooks, papers, like I studied not 12 hours a day plus for 10 weeks to take that exam, because in large part because I didn't want to take it again. I didn't want to go through that process again, but also like that's the level of knowledge that we have to pass that test. I didn't want to read anything for years after that. Like I just didn't want to read anything because that was so intense that it was like I don't, that's what like reading meant, like locked in a
Mhm.
room studying for all that. And so it took a while to even get back to reading for pleasure. And now what I've done over the last 4 years in like real estate investing has felt like a second residency, like just a high intensity, number of years of training to get, a high level of understanding and be, someone who can uh, operate again with I still want I still want near perfection. I mean, that's still the goal anyway. Like it's harder to ensure that maybe when I'm outside of the OR because it's not just on me, but that is still the goal.
So as you sit here today and you're buying your first business and you're invested in apartment complexes and all that stuff,
Mhm.
what do you know now, or what is your advice now that you didn't have when before you started real estate investing? What would be your advice to others?
I think probably my biggest piece would be understanding who you're partnering with, like whether that's as a partner by sort of the traditional definition, or it's the vendors, it's the property management company, it's investors, like all of the people that surround real estate investment, the lenders, like all of that stuff matters. And when you're in maybe in the beginning and you're like, I just want to do deals, I want to partner with the people that can get that done with me, and I'll figure it out on the back end. There's some really good stuff about I'll figure it out on the back end. Like there's some of that in entrepreneurship and investing in business, because you can't actually know everything, and so you could get stuck in analysis paralysis. But the team around you probably is going to have, especially early on, the biggest impact that you can, that or the biggest impact on your success. And it again, I just mean that in a very general sense of anybody that you work with on a particular deal, property, whatever, however you want to, in business, like any of that, it's going to be similar. And so I think I've shifted the importance I put on that. And I also, because I mean, we've talked about this before, but it's not, it's probably harder to get out of a real estate or business deal than it is to get out of a bad marriage. So if something goes wrong, you got to stick it out. Like, especially if you have investors on, you're representing investors, like you have no, in my mind, I have no choice but to make sure things work out for them, whatever that means for me, however hard that is for me. Like in my mind, that it's not an option to just kind of abandon the investors in a deal. And so sometimes that ends up causing hurt for the general partners and the operators and stuff like that. But that, to me, that's the responsibility you signed up for.
I think that, tell everybody this all the time, I think the business I would have bought in the beginning and the business I would buy now after owning one, it's two totally different things. Now you can barely get me to buy a business.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
And I think that people are so worried about their first couple real estate deals, and my advice is like, just go buy some things, like
Yeah.
buy yourself if you have to, get comfortable with the transaction like that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong. We tried to buy a piece of property that I really wanted. It fell through. Everything was good. Last minute, family members decided they wanted it. It's the whole thing. But I was getting comfortable with the ability to buy a piece of land for myself.
Yeah.
So like I'm learning that next time when that emotion there, I'm going to be even calmer.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this happens a lot in real estate specifically, is where the deals you buy for your first deal, or maybe your first couple of deals, are not deals that you do, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. But if you have longevity in that business, in that space, whether it's buying apartment buildings or it's buying businesses or Airbnb, whatever it is, if you have longevity, it means you stuck with it even when it wasn't, the ones that didn't go the way that you wanted them to. There's always going to be challenges, and that's why a lot of people don't do it, right? Because it's like there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong and cause stress. And so I think it's just understanding that, and there's a lot of people, thankfully there's a lot of people out there, I mean yourself included, but like that will talk about that and talk about, like, the example that always comes to mind for me is Alex Hermosi, where he's like, you should be 10 years in before you actually feel like you should be successful, like things like that, where it's like it just takes a long time of grinding and facing challenge after challenge before you get to really celebrate, I guess.
I mean, what if we literally said, like, my first 10 years of getting into business or investing is just practice?
Yeah. I mean, I think it is, right? Like, I mean, you have a podcast, I have a podcast. Like, I talk to the guys that have been in it for 20 years, 30 years. It's a whole different level of what I love to see is just calmness. They're
Yes.
like, yep, the economy has been very volatile right now. And they're like, but guess what? I knew it was going to be, because I've seen it twice before or 3 times before. Like, I knew what was coming. I've also, they've had time to create a sustainable business outside of transactions, right? Like a lot of people in 2018 through 2021, their businesses were based on the fees when buying a deal, like when doing the transaction, and not, what does this look like if we're not continuing to do transactions? And so it was understanding that and being prepared for that. Like in the future, I'm very excited about what the future can bring, because now I have a better understanding of what the hard times look like.
And I think that we package stuff, and I think we sell it, right. And there's a couple things that we're selling that I think people are they're starting to understand. Passive income, financial freedom, those ridiculous things. I think at the end of the day, people are looking for options, and you need to be available to have the best options at your fingertips. Yeah. And that's what it is. The rest of the stuff is all, you'll figure it out. You'll find the right vehicle. Yeah. You'll find the right business partners. But like, just don't ever be in a position where you feel like you have to do something, because that's when you don't have any options. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I mean, that's true on the front end or the back end, right? Because like, whether you're talking about real estate or stocks or what, like any investment, Bitcoin, who cares? But like, if you don't have to sell, you haven't actually lost anything. Like there's no, until if there's, the market has a downturn and you have some loss of value just based on market factors, you didn't lose any money unless you had to sell it during that time. And so if you're in a position where you don't have to do anything, whether that's buy or sell, then you're good. Like that's what the great investors do. Like Warren Buffett's not having a fire sale on any of his, like, he's not like, oh, I really need some money right now, I'm going to offload 2 billion shares of Apple. Like that's not why he's making those decisions. Like he's making decisions based on what's the best, economic choice for him. And so it's getting, I mean, it takes time to get to that level, obviously, but it's having that in mind.
So as somebody who never thought probably he would ever have a podcast, same question, but different, as you've, done as many episodes as you've done, what's kind of your take on what it's brought into your life and kind of your advice to other people?
Yeah. I mean, you know for a fact I never thought I would have a podcast. Didn't I was very resistant to doing it because I still really don't like seeing my own face on camera or hearing my voice, but it has been really a kind of an incredible way to network. Um, I've learned a ton. Like it's literally like a personal conversation with like successful people, right? Like I can go I have a guest come on, whatever their particular niche is, I can talk to them and be like, tell me, that sounds interesting. Tell me about Airbnb. That sounds interesting. Tell me about, mobile home parks, whatever the case may be. That may not be things that I focus on, but like still, I mean, the connections and again, it's just that it's like a almost a built-in network. And what's been super cool to see is I don't know that I ever anticipated this, because when you start the podcast, anyone who does start a podcast, it's hard to get guests. Like it's hard to get guests at first. Like it's not, you're going to have to really work at that. And definitely, in that first probably year and a half, there were times where I was like, oh, we're just going to run out of shows. Like it was scary to me. But now, I mean, I haven't done any outreach for 6 months. And well, occasionally I ask someone, like if I meet someone or someone that I'm like excited to have on, but like no real targeted outreach in 6 months. And I kind of can't stop recording. It's good. It's a good problem to have, but it has not been, we have enough episodes now that people ask to be on it. So that happened at some point. I don't honestly not exactly sure like when that transition happened, but it was like it was kind of cool to notice it, because then I was recording so frequently and we were getting so far out on the recordings. I actually like cut down the amount of time that I had open for recording, because I felt like people don't want to record and have their episode come out 4 months later or whatever. Like that's so.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been a really, really cool experience that has, I think, opened up a lot of connections, really.
I love that. What is your best piece of advice currently for people? What are you learning on right now?
My biggest piece of advice is I do think people need to start actively investing, passively investing, whatever it is. I think you do need to start. We talked about needing to kind of be careful about your partnerships and things like that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, like time is your best friend when it comes to investing. So even if you have challenges that come up, if you started early, you have time to recover from those challenges, versus, oh, I'll wait till, I mean, like I'm almost 50. I really started getting into investing like really seriously about it. It's only been 8 years maybe, and real estate heavy for the last 4. Um, and so I have often felt like I was in catch up mode. And but I have now shifted how I think about everything in terms of my kids. So they're so young. What I need to do is create a foundation, and I need to teach them how to keep it going. And so with the amount of time they have left in their lives, I don't actually need to get that much invested for them to be really quite wealthy if they continue the process as they age. So I've started looking at it as, not what 20 years for me. I'm looking at it as like 60 years for my kids. So there's a lot more time for me to use the next 10 or 20 years to set that foundation. And I don't mean like, hey, here's a pot of money. I mean, let's learn about this together so you can continue doing it, and hopefully better than me. And so, but whether you have kids or not, like getting started is what matters. Like you have, on average a 5 to 7 year doubling time for money. Like my biggest fear over what has happened in today's economy, where there's been a lot of turmoil and people have hit some struggles, is all the people, especially like, well, passive or active, all the people that invested in 2020, 2021, and their deals didn't go well, and now they just stop. And that's the worst possible thing that could happen for them, because now you've only experienced bad. Like if you got in, then you did one deal, it didn't go well, and you're like, you know what, this is terrible. Like, no, that deal didn't go well, but like, that doesn't mean investing as a whole is a bad idea. And you kind of have to like get back on the horse and keep going, because otherwise you're kind of wasting time.
No, I love that. So if people want to find your podcast, they want to reach out to you, how would they do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the podcast is Know Your Why. You can find it on any, Apple, Spotify. It's on all the podcasting platforms. Reach out directly to me. My email is jason@larkcapital.com. Website's larkcapital.com. So my name's also like, no one else has this name, so you can Google on any of the social medias and you'll find me. There's the only Balaras are in my family, so it's pretty uncommon name to find.
Oh, I love it. Guys, if you got some value from this episode, rate us and review us, send it to a friend, and we'll see you next time. Folks, if you made it to the end of the episode, I'm sure you found some value with what you're listening to. If you could send this to a friend, rate us and review us, share us around. The more that you share us, the more that we can share content with you. Thank you all so much for your time and listening, and we'll see you next time.